Well, over the last week, one of the many attacks on Mike Johnson's Christian faith by the so-called media has been that he, quote, believes in a religious litmus test for politicians. Now, this claim by the uber-leftist publication Mother Jones, which the legacy media will often echo or give lift to, published this article in part, and I read, quote, though Johnson now is second in the line of presidential succession, we're still finding out basic and important facts about him and how he sees the world. This includes his alarming record as a hardcore conservative cultural warrior motivated by a Christian fundamentalist belief who has fiercely opposed gay rights. Now let me insert what that means. That means he has supported natural biblical marriage. Now back to the article. Called for a total nationwide ban on abortion, proposed the end of no-fault divorce, and urged a return to 18th century values, end quote. Then he goes on to say, one more significant thing I've discovered is that Johnson appears to believe in a religious litmus test for politicians, end quote. Now all of this, most of which is exaggerations or distortions of what was actually stated, comes from a seminar that Mike and his wife Kelly taught. Now, I happen to know a little bit about this. Not only was I at the seminar and taught a portion of it, but the course Mike and Kelly taught was based on a God and government course that I've taught going back 25 years. Now, let me go back to the article from Mother Jones. Quote, Johnson was telling the folks in the pews that the only political candidates deserving support are those who share this worldview and who embrace the notion that the United States has been a Christian nation. This, he says, smacks of Christian nationalism and appears to be a religious test for politics, unquote. Now, this guy, or person, I assume it's a guy, I didn't check to see what their preferred pronouns were, but it's obvious they, them, doesn't understand Christianity. In fact, them doesn't understand American history either. Let me explain what Mike was actually talking about. As Moses led Israel out of Egypt with the goal of going into the land of promise, Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, gave him advice about putting together a decentralized government. And by the way, a decentralized government keeps power from being consolidated in one place. And that's why we have a federalist system of government. It's a deterrent to corruption and tyranny. We read about this, Exodus 18:21. Moreover, look for able men from all the people, men who fear God, who are trustworthy and hate a bribe, and place such men over the people as chiefs of thousands, of hundreds, of fifties, and of tens. Now, these qualities of leadership are actually echoed in the New Testament by Paul. Paul, in his letter to Titus, was telling him to look for certain qualities in church leaders. We read this in Titus 1:7. For an overseer, that is a leader, as God's steward, must be above reproach. He must not be arrogant or quick-tempered or a drunkard or violent or greedy for gain, but hospitable, a lover of good, self-controlled, upright, holy, and disciplined. I don't think it is a misapplication, nor do I think we would go wrong by using the same criteria to evaluate political leaders. Now, similar sentiments were stated by John Jay, one of our nation's founders and the first Supreme Court Justice of the Supreme Court. This is what he said, quote, Providence has given to our people the choice of their ruler, and it is the duty as well as the privilege and interest of our Christian nation to select and prefer Christians for their rulers, end quote. Whoa, so how does this line up with a prohibition against a religious test laid out in Article 6, Clause 3 of the Constitution? Well, let me read that portion of the Constitution. Quote, the senators and representatives before mentioned, and the members of the several state legislatures and all executives and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. But then it goes and states this, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States, end quote. What does that mean? Well, as it was originally intended, the federal government could not require a religious act or profession to be made in order to hold a public office. It did not apply, by the way, to the states until the Supreme Court expanded it in 1961. This has absolutely no bearing on who or how voters select their candidates. As Christians, we should vote for candidates who align with biblical truth. You have every right to know whether a candidate for office fears God and has a biblical worldview. These same voices in the media who are attacking Speaker Johnson were the ones criticizing evangelicals for not using a religious test when they voted for Donald Trump. If I had $1 for every time I was asked, how can you support a man who has been married 3 times and done X, Y, and Z, I could retire. And I'm sure that would make some on the left very happy. But here's the truth. I did apply this test in 2016 and 2020. In 2016, I supported Ted Cruz until he dropped out and then it became a choice between Hillary Clinton, who had championed abortion around the globe, and Donald Trump, who had embraced conservative, biblically aligned policies. So in my personal capacity, I chose Trump. Now, I've spent the last 25 years identifying and working with men and women that God has raised up to serve in public office. Those who fear God, are trustworthy, and are guided by truth so that they are not easily corrupted. Call it a religious test if you like, but what it is in reality, it's voters preferring good people so that we might have good government.